destabilize Iraq and Syria against Sunni terrorist groups and other militants supported by Saudi Arabia and, to a degree, Israel. He again denounced the Iran nuclear agreement, whose main flaw in the eyes of the Israelis and neocons is that it disrupted their plans to bomb Iran, and he called for regime change in Iran, a long-beloved dream of the Israelis and neocons. He repeated the Israeli neocon propaganda about Hezbollah as a terrorist organization when Hezbollah's real crime was driving the Israeli military out of southern Lebanon in 2000, ending an occupation that began with the 1982 invasion. He praised his rush-to-judgment decision to bomb Syria last April in line with Israeli neocon propaganda against Bashar al-Assad, and partly out of a desire to please the same Washington establishment that is still scheming to impeach him. He spoke with a crass hypocrisy that the neocons and many Israeli leaders have perfected, particularly his demand that all nations respect the rights of every other sovereign nation, when he made clear that he, like his White House predecessors, is ready to violate the sovereignty of other nations that get in official Washington's way. Just this century, the United States has invaded multiple nations without UN authorization, which, kind of okay, whatever, but based on various coalitions of the willing, other subterfuges for wars of aggression, etc., etc., etc. Not only did Bush invade both Afghanistan and Iraq, while also sponsoring anti-terror operations in many other countries, but Obama acknowledged ordering military attacks in 7 countries, including against the will of sovereign states such as Libya and Syria, and sponsored a violent coup against the elected government of the Ukraine. For his part, Trump already has shown disdain for international law by authorizing military strikes inside Yemen and Syria, and also found out the United States is the preeminent violator of sovereignty and international law in the world today, Perry says, yet Trump wagged his finger at others, including Russia over Ukraine and China over the South China Sea. But basically the whole point being, and I'll have this on American Faith Today on the Facebook page, the whole point being that it's more of the same. That no matter what Trump says, no matter what foreign policy you might think he does that's going to be different, no matter how much he railed against interventionism and getting involved and so forth and so on, he's following the exact same script, the exact same policies, the exact same route that his predecessors did before him. So it's more of the same. As they say, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Wash, rinse, repeat, as they also say. Now, this from the Free Thought Project. You know how early on in Trump's presidency, everything from the Trump supporters was, oh, well, he would be getting things done if it weren't for the Obama deep state. And we've got to support Trump against the deep state, his fight against the deep state. And there were some of us, not to try to sound arrogant, but there were some of us, myself including, who thought, this is all nonsense. Trump is part or will be part of the deep state. Well, this from the freethoughtproject.com. Deep state admits they finally gotten a grip on Trump, likening him to George W. Bush. And basically, again, this pointing out, Trump is now under deep state control, business as usual, just like it was under Bush and Obama. This from, don't really see all, Matt Agorist, the author, but saying that Trump's now under deep state control, just like it was before, just like it would have been under Hillary. Goes on to say Americans were duped into accepting endless wars by George W. Bush, thanks to a constant bombardment of lies sold to the masses under the guise of protecting freedom, which did turn out to be a cruel joke. All one needs to do to realize no freedoms were protected by these wars, in which thousands of Americans died and hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians were slaughtered, is to look around today, with every action recorded, phone tapped, innocent families surveilled, rights stripped, and citizens killed by their government. The term freedom has become a mere symbolic representation of the brittle shell of America, left behind after being gutted by unelected operatives in the deep state, hell-bent on total control and perpetual war. And again, the point being, even if we want to say there is a deep state, and for that matter there is, but now Trump is fully compliant with the deep state. And as evidence of this, they roll out Bill Kristol, who is regarded as maybe the most obvious neocon, who, after the speech, praised Trump on MSNBC, saying Trump sounded a little like George W. Bush to me, and for all of Donald Trump's America First talk and repudiation of the Bush-McCain-Romney foreign policy, it came across as more standard, even with all the Trumpian aspects. In other words, more of the same. Again, same route, whether it's Trump, whether it's Bush, whether it's Obama, whether it's Hillary, it's the same darned thing. Kristol openly admitted that yes, Trump ran on non-interventionist policy of peace and actually criticized Bush and Obama for their senseless wars, but now he is just like Bush. And Kristol says, the people around Trump have gotten more of a grip on Trump, I think, in foreign policy than I would have expected. This is a more normal speech by an American president than I might have thought 3-4 months ago. And again, saying that just like that on live TV, the neocon of neocons, who is an unmistakable member and policy writer of the deep state, said that Trump is now a puppet whose very strings are pulled by the swamp he promised to drain, yet never did. Well, again, that's a promise that many of us knew he wasn't going to keep for one reason or another. And they say, welcome to the deep state, Donald Trump. We hope you enjoy selling out your base. Now, there's a guy who's a Facebook friend of mine, and I've got about 8 minutes left here. I'm not doing terrible on time. I'm going rather quickly. But he said something a while back that stuck with me. And I would add the ripping apart of our culture, the departure from God as well. But he said that the two things that matter when it comes to the government, the country, and presidents are debt and wars, and that Trump is pro-war and pro-debt. I think quite obviously we're seeing that he is pro-war, despite what he said on the campaign. And we actually even heard on the campaign that he was pro-debt. He called himself the king of debt. Now this from economicprism.com. Again, just a few highlights. Basically, they point out that in early 2009, the U.S. federal debt went from 10.6 trillion, or since early 2009, the debt went from 10.6 trillion to nearly 20 trillion. Well, actually, it's now over 20 trillion to 20.1. Someone mentioning after Congress suspended the debt limit last Friday, again, a Trump and Democrat agreement, the Treasury went ahead and reported the $300 billion of off-balance spending they'd run up over the last 6 months since hitting the debt ceiling in March. This is what Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, by the way, Goldman Sachs, George Soros guy, that Mnuchin, but this is what Mnuchin meant by resorting to extraordinary measures to keep the government humming. Sounds like Enron accounting to us. And it goes on to say that basically, there's a lot of information here, but that under George W. Bush, the federal debt doubled. Under Barry Big Ears, Obama, the federal debt doubled. And there are predictions floating around that the Donald will again double the federal debt, taking us to 40 trillion. If he and Chuckle Schumer succeed in obliterating the debt ceiling, he just may pull it off. Can you imagine how miserable the economy will be when it's loaded up with 40 trillion in government debt? You'd be lucky if GDP merely flatlined. The whole dang shebang will be crushed under weight of this massive debt, and don't get me started on corporate and private debt. That's a whole other story. So, but hey, again, at least we didn't get Hillary in this binary election, right? Well, look, I got about 5-6 minutes left, and I don't know with this amount of time how great I've done at driving the point home, especially since I go a little quickly and trying to get this information in. But there's a reason why pretty much all presidents are controlled. There's a reason why Donald Trump was going to be another president who would be controlled, who would be owned, no matter what his base said. And part of that reason comes back to this from Philosophy of Metrics, how Rothschild Incorporated saved Donald Trump. You know, Rothschild, the big international banker, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, some of us might know them as the Kenites. Well, yes, Rothschild Incorporated bailed out Donald Trump. Now, this article, or this blog piece, talks about kind of the grooming and the preparation, even going back to 1988 and the 80s. In 1988, Donald Trump talking about what he would do if he ran for president on Oprah. And of course, then later, I think about 2000, threw out the idea of Oprah as a running mate. But anyway, the meat of this is that in the early 80s, Donald Trump was an up-and-coming real estate developer in New York. There was no connection between the Trump name and casinos or gambling. So what he did was he acquired 93% of the shares in Resorts International. Now, Resorts International, they started out, I think, as a paint company in the early 50s, but basically they were always a front company for the CIA and the Mossad, and they laundered money to the CIA and to the Mossad so they could do all of their illicit activities against the people. And they laundered that money through drug trafficking, gambling, other illegal activities. But anyway, Trump was the front man for Resorts International, but the real power brokers and the ones who ran the company were Meyer Lansky, Tibor Rosenbaum, William Mellon Hitchcock, David Rockefeller, and one Baron Edmund de Rothschild. And so they looked at Trump as this flamboyant, up-and-coming real estate tycoon, be a colorful front man, but they were the real power brokers, movers and shakers behind Resorts International. When Donald Trump got himself into financial trouble, when the real estate market in New York tanked, when the casino started to go belly up, it was Wilbur Ross Jr., Senior Managing Director of Rothschild Incorporated, that pushed for Trump to be allowed to keep his casinos and to rebuild his threatened empire. Wilbur Ross Jr., again, of Rothschild Incorporated, the same Wilbur Ross Jr. who is now the Commerce Secretary of the United States. But anyway, the point here being that Donald Trump has this connection to these Kenites, to these globalists, to these international bankers that he railed against. He then, of course, proceeded to fill his administration with Goldman Sachs types, with George Soros types, with Wall Street types, with the very people. He filled the swamp with the very people that he was supposed to drain from the swamp. And of course, most of his base failed to pick up on that. We've got a president, again, who is going left, left, left. Every once in a while, he throws something out there, he throws some red meat out to try to make everybody think he's still on the right side of things, both in terms of a correct sense, in terms of a right side political aisle sense. But yet we see him keep continuing to work with the Democrats. We see all of his policies so far have pretty much not come to fruition. There is no wall. There is no locking up of Hillary. There is no backing out or tearing up the Iran deal. We are trying to decide whether we're actually finally, fully, and completely getting out of the Paris Climate Accords. But bottom line is we've got a president who is connected to these globalist bankers, to these Kenites, to these Rothschilds and Rockefellers. We've got a president who owes them for bailing him out when he was very, very close, not only to losing his businesses, but being financially destitute and bankrupt himself. I recall a brief piece, an interview from some time ago on like 60 Minutes or an ABC show or a CNN news show, in which somebody was interviewing one of these bankers, one of these large bankers, and asked how close was Donald Trump to going personally bankrupt. And this guy said, very close. And we talked about it, and we decided he was more valuable to us still financially alive than dead. Look, the bottom line here is don't put your trust in any man. Research every man. Every candidate. Don't believe the rhetoric. Don't just get tied up. They all say one thing on the campaign trail. They all do something else. Put your trust in God and realize that He's the only one that can get us out of this mess. Anyway, that's about it for me. You've been listening to American Faith Today. Gotta go. Have a great week.